So, the Daleks really needs no introduction. It's the first Terry Nation story, the first story to be directed by Christopher Barry, and our first 6-7 parter length story. Also, it introduces the Daleks, but that's something obvious, and so mentioning it seems redundant, even though I now have. The Daleks were the kick in the teeth the show needed to survive. Already facing possible cancellation or cancellations, the cultural impact of the Daleks and the following Dalek mania cannot be overstated, and so the question becomes, how good is the original Dalek serial? And I think it's a story that suffers from its length, like a few other serials I'll eventually cover. You can feel it being stretched in episode too much, and I'll get onto that once I've discussed the serial as a whole. Like with An Unearthly Child, I'm going to discuss part 1 separately, as while it is a direct introduction to the serial, it's just the main cast with hints of life on the planet, in the form of the Magnodon, the mysterious hand, the knocking on the TARDIS doors, plus the box of files and the Daleks manipulator arm at the cliffhanger. The fact that there's only hints of life in what are shown as mostly mechanical creatures tricks the viewer into thinking what actually lives on the planet, that being a planet of robots rather than the planet we come to know it as. The atmosphere is incredibly creepy, the jungle has been petrified by something and there's almost no signs of life. The human, or rather foul hand, does weaken this point, as it does show that there is something recognisable on the planet, and does take away from this atmosphere, but at the same time has its own creepiness to it. It creates the idea that perhaps this could be Earth in the future rather than another planet. For as scary as the Daleks are, the possibility that this is some future Earth that has been devastated by something is a terrifying idea, especially for so early in the show's run. The Metal City builds on this, a common setting of science fiction in the future of Earth, but with the lack of any signs of life is eerie no matter the way you look at it. While An Unearthly Child built a mystery, the Daleks builds a world with a terrifying atmosphere to it. This atmosphere reaches its peak with the episode 1 cliffhanger. Obviously, with the introduction of the Daleks, we now have other characters and our villain for the story. The atmosphere from episode 1 is now gone and instead is replaced with another kind of scary atmosphere, this being in the form of the Daleks. While yes, they have become the butt of many jokes in the 60 years since they first appeared on screen, during this appearance they are terrifying, being presented as a race that only have an interest in their own survival and a burning desire to destroy the Thals. But despite this, they are patient, manipulating our heroes so that they can make their plans to kill the Thals, trying and failing to use their drug to leave their shells, and ultimately deciding to detonate another neutron bomb and destroy what's left of the planet for their own survival. Their genius and coldness in this story, which they will later lack, is what makes them terrifying. They barely kill anyone in this story, and yet are remembered as machines of death, even if that's almost entirely through what they say they will do, though ultimately failing. While they do show their Nazi origins, these Daleks are yet to have their genocidal characteristics that they one day will. They only have their sights set on the Thals, and our heroes are just in the way. With our leads, we see them coming together to defeat the Daleks, although this is out of force rather than choice. Being somewhat of an antagonist still, the Doctor lies saying that the TARDIS cannot take off due to a problem with one of the fluid links. This is so he can visit the city. This does push the Doctor's curiosity, but again shows his selfishness, as his actions end up getting the leads captured by the deadliest race in existence. Admittedly, if it wasn't for this, the mains would have probably ended up dying from radiation poisoning, so his actions do inadvertently save their lives, but that's not exactly a point in his favour. Ian, on the other hand, really gets into his role as the main character. If you have no idea what I mean, during Ian and Barbara's tenure on the show, Ian really took up the mantle as the show's lead, or what we come to know the Doctor as. Though lacking the intelligence of the Doctor, Ian was the one who had the moral compass which the Doctor lacked, and so would be the one to choose to help people. Ian is definitely driving key moments, most notably the convincing of the Thals to stand against the Daleks, his plans to make them show their anger by first pretending to trade the Thals' history for the fluid link, and then threatening to take Dione to the Daleks, which finally pushes Aladon to his breaking point. Barbara also has this moral compass and is almost just as selfless as Ian, although does side with the Doctor in wanting to get the Thals' help to recover the fluid link for their survival only. I do enjoy how Ian and Barbara are opposed here. It somewhat reflects the Daleks and the Thals in a way, both being races that are trying to survive but are going about it in different ways, although comparing Barbara to the Daleks is probably a first. Barbara does also get a romantic subplot with the Thal Ganatus, or at least that's how I'm viewing it. Ganatus definitely likes Barbara and I think she has a thing for him. Fortunately, it doesn't take away from either of their characters. It's sweet and has a satisfying ending when the TARDIS crew leaves at the end. Susan, on the other hand, she gets written with a more childish nature than before, showing a lot more emotion towards everyone's disbelief that she was touched by someone, and doing a reasonable amount of screaming. But we do get to see her braver side, when she goes back into the petrified jungle alone to get the files to hopefully save the lives of her friends. Combined with her knowledge of the flowers she finds, and her greater awareness of the danger her and the Doctor are in when sabotaging a static electricity control box, this does show the more interesting side to Susan which was lacking since An Unearthly Child 1. Compared to how she was developed in the later parts of that serial, I think this is an improvement, even if a small one. As I stated near the beginning, the serial feels a bit long. Notably episode 6 is very slow, focusing on Ian and Barbara and some files trying to jump a short gap. It does feature a notable death, but this episode is definitely the slow point of the serial. This would be a much more solid 6-parter, but we've got 7, and the knowledge that later Dalek serials would be far better at filling their run times, mostly because they are 6 parts. Mostly. Overall, The Daleks is clearly a far more interesting story than what came before, and it's what's responsible for putting Doctor Who on the map, shooting its popularity into the stratosphere and preventing its first potential cancellation. While its pace is slow in the latter half, it's still very fun and definitely has a creepy atmosphere. Really, anything I could say about the importance of the Daleks has been said before, and so I'm just going to leave it here by saying it's probably the best science fiction serial in the first series. Well, bar maybe one. And so now the TARDIS has left Skaro behind, but as our leads prepare to return to Earth, something happens, knocking them all from their feet. Next time, Edge of Destruction.